Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 4 of the allhat-nocattle podcast. My name's Joel Montfort, and with me is my wife, Angelica.
Hi, y'all. We're 282 days until the November elections. Early voting starts on February 20th. Topics we're going to discuss today include the economy and the fact that it is booming and the big border problem.
That's right. The economy is going crazy. It is on fire.
The U.S. GDP was up another 3.3% in Q4 of 2023 and up more than 25% in total under Biden. Inflation is down to 3.2%. Unemployment is at a historically low 3.7%. 14 million jobs have been created under President Biden. The stock markets are at record highs now. The Dow is at 38K plus.
This is like a historic economy. Like, we haven't had all of these things firing at the same time in ages. To think about the GDP being up 25%, I mean, that's a phenomenal number. I think Trump's total number during his presidency was like 14%. So it's way above what Trump did. And inflation, which has been a concern all of last year, is back down to where it should be, around 3%.
All right. So when we're thinking about such an emotional human issue as immigration and
right.
The border crisis, as they're calling it, you know, it's really important for us to, of course, recognize and not minimize the human component, the emotional, personal, human component to the topic, of course, of immigration. But when you look
right.
at this just through the lens of statistics, just purely thinking about the stats,
which is what we do.
Right. That's what allhat-nocattle does. And so we wanted to spend a little bit of time just talking about the border crisis from a statistical and historical standpoint.
Right. Okay, so I thought we would start from a historical standpoint where immigration has been. I'm just going to run through some quick statistical numbers here. There are all sorts of charts out there because, as you know, the GOP is screaming bloody murder that the border, we're being invaded. These are unheard of numbers and the country is going to be overrun. I mean, it's really crazy. And of course, if you look at the news, they're kind of following suit with it. So, you know, the implication is that we've got this unsustainable amount of people crossing the border. And if you go back and you look at statistics going all the way back to like 1947, I mean, even back in the 1950s, we had in some years over 1 million people crossing the border. But for me, the main thing is if you look at the mid 80s and all the way through the 90s and into the 2000s, we had just about 1,200,000 people crossing the border every year, peaking as high as 1.7 million in the 80s and again in like 2000. So, wow. I mean, there were so many years where millions of people were coming across the border. And as we like to point out, country's still here. We're still strong 20 plus years later. It's not like all these doom and gloom things that it's all going to be awful if these people come across the border, because as we know, why are they here? They're here because they need work, because they need
asylum.
Yeah, they need all sorts of things. I mean, they didn't just come over here to rob us blind or whatever the GOP likes to claim.
Right. And it's not a new problem. And I think that's a really interesting point. I won't call it a problem. It's not a new issue. This has been going on for a long, long time.
Right.
And certainly nothing new. But boy, are we talking about it a lot, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, think about it. The number one thing you really want to run against if you're not in power is the economy or crime, those sort of things. They don't have that. Yep. This is what they've got. So they're manufacturing. Literally, they're just manufacturing something.
Digging for something, absolutely.
Right. So the past couple of years, I mean, there's no doubt immigration has been a little higher. I mean, I think in 2022, it was 2.2 million. And this last year in 23, it was 2 million. So, I mean, those are higher numbers, but It's not like it's been doing this for 15, 20 years like it was in the 80s, and we have more people in the country. So there's no reason we can't absorb these immigrants and have them be productive citizens of the United States. And, hopefully one day they or their children will achieve what we call the American dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what I like to tie in with this is let's look at the U.S. population. Right now, we've got like 335 million people in the United States. I think everybody pretty much knows that. What a lot of people may not know is we are expected to decline around the year 2080 without high levels of immigration. Our population will begin to drop, and it basically flatlines here in the next 30, 40 years. The reason is because the current U.S. birth rate is 1.64, which means for every 2 people sitting around having babies, they're only creating not quite 2 babies. So the population is going to go down. This is a real interesting statistic to me. By the end of this decade, I mean, right now, the decade we're in, 6 years from now, there will be more 65-year-olds than there will be children under the age of 18. And the final statistic that I think is interesting to me, because this is what Trump and everybody else loves to carry on about, is these immigrants are, what was the term they go and poison our blood, which is a very Hitler-esque terminology. And it's reprehensible that we have a politician in the United States using that kind of word in reference to immigrants coming over here. White people will shrink from our current, we're just under 200 million to 179 million by the year 2060. So we're not doing our job if we're trying to, procreate and exist, by the GOP's manifesto, that's some weird, important thing to do. So if they're so concerned about that and everybody else is, it's not happening. Our country is going to shrink without an influx of immigrants.
And who's going to do all of our farming, and who's going to be working in our kitchens and do all of the things that we all know that immigrants do. Those jobs that they do happily, they're grateful to have the jobs. And hey, I managed restaurants for a long time, and it was really difficult to get anyone else to do those jobs. Right.
And I do construction. That's one of the things, that's my other business. And guess what? Big chunks of construction. You want to know who's putting that new roof on after you've had hail damage? It's all migrants. They're not people. They're definitely not white folks sitting up on that roof when it's 115 degrees peeling shingles off of it. Those aren't the guys who are out raking your leaves and mowing your yard. I mean, it's so many service-oriented businesses where a product is delivered or put in your lap and you think about the convenience of that hamburger. It's being done by immigrants who have come to this country, and they're willing to work for not great pay. I mean, we all love the convenience of getting our yards mowed and it not costing, $300-400 a month. That's able to be done because these people are willing to do it for, $10 an hour. What's minimum wage? $7.25.
It's really hard work. And the fact of the matter is, these are just facts. We don't have a lot of Americans who are willing to do the work for the amount of money that that migrants and immigrants are willing to do it for. That's the bottom line.
Right. So, so here's a statistics population projection in the U.S. that I think pretty interesting. We're currently at 335 with zero immigration, which we know isn't happening. But if we had none, by the year 2100, we would be at 226 million. So, that's more than 100 million people our country would lose in the next, 80 years. That's an asinine.
Wow.
Think about the U.S. with 226 million people. We would not be competitive in much of anything, and everything would be crumbling, and everybody would be old. It would be an absolute nightmare. The most likely outcome they have projected based on moderate immigration, et cetera, is we go from 335 to 366. So, what is that? About a 10% increase over the next 60 years. That's pretty slow, compared to some other countries. If we go to high immigration, which I don't even, it's not even really clearly defined in this, but maybe the numbers that we're seeing now are considered high. We would go from 335 to 435 by the year 2100. But that's not that much. I mean, this is a huge country. And the bottom line is we need these immigrants to fill these jobs to keep America strong and keep it building and keep things going. And so people can do what they need to do. I mean, that's what capitalism is about. It has to have ample labor. That's a thing.
Absolutely. In 2021, Governor Abbott launched Operation Lone Star. So fast forward a little bit
Right.
to Operation Lone Star. So he launched this operation to counter what he called an invasion at the southern border. And his order sent 10,000 National Guard soldiers and state troopers to the border, where they installed razor wire and cargo containers as blockades. They arrested any immigrant they encountered on private property for trespassing.
Right.
And what a costly operation that was. I mean, we know not very effective, right? But boy, did it cost. To date, that cost has ballooned to $10 billion and counting.
$10 billion.
Billion with B.
And did teachers get a raise this last year?
They sure didn't. How many sessions did we have?
Oh, geez. What,
teachers
4 special
still didn't
sessions?
Get a raise,
I couldn't
but
even
we've got
count.
$10 billion for a nonsensical Operation Lone Star.
Right. So in their statistics, we've arrested 500,000 migrants. And,
500,000 migrants were detained.
But it's just all a joke, because even if they detain them, they have to turn around and hand them off to Border Patrol for processing. And then I guess they put them on a bus and ship them to Denver or New York, and that whole fiasco.
Yeah.
So this past year, Abbott, he escalated his rhetoric and began building more of Trump's walls on private land near the border, and even installed the infamous Rio Grande floating buoys. Some of that private land were big Abbott donors way out near West Texas, way down near the border. I mean, I forget the guy's name, but he puts several miles of this stuff out in the middle of nowhere where there are no people crossing. I mean, it's an absolute boondoggle. So I guess the guy must have gotten a nice chunk of change to having all that Trump wall put up there. Wow. It's out there where there's literally nothing.
Yeah. And in December, the Texas legislature approved $1.5 billion more to fund more border wall, that ineffective, ridiculous border wall. $1.5 billion of Texas taxpayer money.
And these walls aren't even contiguous. And they're some of them are just a mile. And then imagine, you run into a wall that's a mile long. You're just going to walk.
So you're going to walk a little extra mile, aren't you?
You just go around it. It might take you an extra 5 minutes. And it's not like most of these are right on the border. Several of them are a mile inland. It's weird. I mean, you're going to walk a mile and you might or might not run into a wall, but you just walk around it.
I didn't know that part. That's very strange, really.
It's ridiculous.
They're already in the U.S. and then they just come to a wall.
Come to a wall in a peach orchard, stuff like that. You're because they can't. The reason it's so difficult to fence off Texas and put walls everywhere is because all the land all the way along the border is privately owned, with the exception of some federal things or, whatever. So you have to get private landowners' permissions to do anything.
Sure.
As a result, it's slow going because the federal government has to go in. They have a little more authority because they can go in and they can basically negotiate with that landowner and, take the land, so to speak. What is it? I forget the term, but the Texas doesn't have that ability as easily, at least. So what Abbott's been doing is he's been putting walls on private Texas land that Texas owns, or in one case, he has a donor that's filthy rich and he puts a couple of miles out in that donor's land for him, even though there are no migrants crossing at that point.
Wow. Just to say you did something, I guess. Oh, boy. So let's see. So moving on January 10th, the Texas National Guard ejected Border Patrol from Shelby Park in Eagle Pass to secure the area. We spoke about that on our last episode of the podcast. That park is located on the border next to the Rio Grande.
Right.
The Justice Department demanded Texas leave the park on January 17th. So far, Abbott has refused. 5 people have drowned in the past few weeks in the Rio Grande where the park is located, and that includes a mother and 2 of her children. We said that we weren't going to speak about the emotional nature of the subject, but it's just really hard to not feel that, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, this poor mother.
It's just heartbreaking, and we know that we would do the very same thing if we were met with the same circumstances as these people are running from.
Right.
It's like, you and I were talking earlier, and I started thinking a little bit about, the deer running from the burning woods. The deer is going to run out of the burning woods. It doesn't matter what's on the other side. You're running out of the burning woods. It's not, it's not because it's easy to cross over to the other side. It's not an opportunity issue. It's that, the situation is so dire that that anything is better than being left to sustain the way that you are.
Right.
Separately, the U.S. sued Texas to allow Border Patrol agents to cut razor wire to be able to help immigrants in distress.
Right.
And the conservatives, Supreme Court of the United States ruled 5-4 against Texas,
Which is kind of surprising.
It is. And conservatives lost their minds.
Right. Suddenly this court that they have spent all this time, all this effort crafting to get to a 6. I mean, they cheated their way there. I mean, let's just be honest. They cheated their way to getting a 6-3 majority, ruled against them. And guess what? It's all corrupt. You can't do anything. This court is everything's bogus. The court system's hosed. Secede. I mean, the crazy that's coming out of the GOP, especially here in Texas.
Let's talk about the response, right? Let's talk about the GOP response. So Trump stated on his Truth Social, quote, encouraged other states to send guardsmen to the aid of Texas. He promised that if elected in November, he would rapidly begin the largest domestic deportation operation in history.
Right.
And he says those illegal aliens Biden let in should not get comfortable because they will be going home.
Right. I mean, it just doesn't get any clearer than that, what his aim is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And just recently, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, during an interview at the border, called the immigrants, again, murderers, terrorists, and rapists. I'm just so tired of hearing that they're murderers and rapists and drug dealers and terrorists and all. I mean, the poor mother who died there, 2 weeks ago with her 2 little children. Which one was she? Was she a drug dealer, or a terrorist, a rapist? I mean, I'm so tired of hearing.
Yeah, it's just I mean, it's real clear. The goal is you dehumanize so people don't feel guilty when they.
Well, it's certainly not the first
these people's
time.
Lives.
Right. It's not the first time in history that we've heard rhetoric like this.
Yeah, I mean, we can't forget that Abbott on a podcast TV show basically said, well, we can't shoot the immigrants because Biden would have us arrested. Just pondering what one option could be if not for the repercussions of it, as if he would do it. I mean, it's just these small, slight show of hands of their terrible. I mean, I don't even know. What do you call it? I mean,
it is terrible, but then to me, it's also lazy. It's like, yeah, it's a complex problem. Sure.
Right.
It's not an easy solution to find. It's a really complex problem. It stems from desperation and hardship in that country that people are fleeing from. As we stated earlier in the show, it's not a new issue. This is not, a new thing, but it is complex for sure.
Right. I mean, you look down at Venezuela, they have, 200+% inflation. I mean, imagine that. I mean, a loaf of bread cost, a week's salary, because things are moving so quickly.
I know it.
So, yeah, then we have 25 red states, their governors have all shown support for what is going on here in Texas at the border standoff. With the feds, they basically are backing Abbott, and many of them are offering to send their National Guards to Texas.
Oh, boy.
To what end? I mean, what is that? What do we, I mean, what? This is it. This is what the GOP does. Like, Democrats call things out. We state them. Everything they do is like sleight of hand, or we're not going to give it a name, but we're going to kind of do it. So, I mean, to me, this is an obvious call for some sort of civil disobedience at bare minimum, but sponsored by states. Now, I mean, the rest of us would call that a civil war, but they're not going to call it that. They're going to say, oh, we'll just send down a couple hundred guards, each one of us, so that Texas has reinforcements for what? Yeah. Again, to go to battle with the Border Patrol, or in case the federal government ends up sending in, the airborne or something to confront the situation at a park.
They haven't thought that far ahead.
I think, here's the thing. I think they have. I really believe they have. I think there's a real possibility. The goal here is some sort of civil unrest between these MAGA lunatics out there who are running around with AR-15s and whatever else. They're all, Gravy SEAL 6, as we like to call them, running around, cosplaying that they're actually in the Army. And then these governors sending down their National Guard people from 25 states, 15 states. I mean, I already know Florida's got some down there. The list is long. So what's the goal here? I mean, is Texas going to be ground zero for a civil war?
Well, surely they can't be okay with that, right? Surely. Well, we all know the reason why our PAC is called All-hat-nocattle is because we know if there's anything the Texas GOP is, it's all hat and no cattle.
And yet we have January 6th as a reference point. So, knock on wood. I hope that in a month or two, we're all still talking about this.
Is it time to doomsday prep? Should we get out the, what is that? What do we get ready for here? What do we need to do? Stock up on our guns and our ammo.
Right, dig a hole in the ground and get a bucket of food.
Build our bunker.
Build a bunker. I don't know.
Hoarding bottles of water and cans of food.
Tear our Democrat stickers off our bumpers, I guess.
I guess just nothing would surprise me at this point. But I can't help but think that it's just posturing. I really believe that it is
gotta hope.
Posturing.
Gotta hope.
Oh boy.
So then, while all this is going on, Congressman Castro out of San Antonio, he's a Democrat, as all you probably know, he has asked Biden, at this point, 2 or 3 times to nationalize the Texas National Guard, federalize, the Texas National Guard. And for those of you that don't know, the Texas National Guard, every state has their kind of reserve Army guys, and they're the National Guard. The president, at his leisure, can federalize any of them at any time for any sort of emergency. So essentially what that would do in theory is pull the carpet out from under Abbott's whole shenanigans down there at the park. If all of a sudden all these guys have to report to Biden and they'd be given a completely different set of orders, Abbott would have to throw a temper tantrum. And historically, this has been done several times. It was done in Alabama when they were trying to integrate schools. I think the same thing happened in Mississippi. I mean, it's been done over and over. It's always Southern, dim-witted governors trying to push some sort of, the pattern's repeating over and over. And here we are again. Basically, it's white folks who are desperately clinging to power because they're terrified of someone with a different skin color. That's the bottom line.
Well, and meanwhile, the Senate's been working hard to put together an immigration plan. Like we said, it's a really complex problem to solve. There are a lot of moving pieces here, lots and lots of things to consider. And certainly the solution is not easy. But I am glad to know that there's a bipartisan solution that's being worked on.
And I don't know that I would call this a silver bullet. It really is very complex. And I don't have all the answers. I'm definitely not some sort of immigration expert. I can look at data and see what's going on. And, you have to look at what's going on in South America and Central America and these countries. You have to look at the process to even come over here. We get this all the time. I see this pushback. Well, this lady and her poor children, they drowned in the river. Well, they should just go to a legal port and this wouldn't be a problem. But here's the thing. You can't go to a legal port. They're backed up in some cases like years.
Right.
And you can only get into the United States. There's only a few reasons. You have to know a friend or family member that can help vouch for you and get you in. You have to have like a real threat within your country, like somebody's trying to kill you sort of stuff. And the third one is like you've got to be a professional with some sort of skill that some sort of corporation will get you a sponsorship for to get over here. That's it. The poor and the needy and the downtrodden and those people that are fearing for their lives and their safety need not apply for the most part. I mean, and if you do, and if you come to the border and you show up at the gate, the guy's very likely to tell you, no, we don't have any room for you today. Try again tomorrow or in a year or whatever. It doesn't really exist. The system as we know it is functionally very broken.
Yeah.
So what you're left with is people jumping over the river and trying to get arrested so that it is forced upon Border Patrol to process them for asylum. And then, a huge chunk of them aren't going to qualify, so they'll end up being sent home. But they all know the court system is, I think at this point, 2 years, 3 years backed up because so many of them are doing it, and our system is broken again.
It was interesting, though. It's a lot of political posturing, too, though, because I saw a video earlier today of a man just walking right across the border and getting on a bus, and the Border Patrol just lets him on. He stashes his backpack under the bus and just hops right on. And so there's also a little bit of info out there that says that maybe some people who try to cross the border are having a little more luck than we think.
Right. Well, everybody's saying the border's wide open and Biden's not doing his job. And one of the big things that I noticed is there have been dramatically more court cases under Biden than there were under Trump. I mean, last year was like a record number. I forget the number off the top of my head, but record high numbers, along with record high numbers of deportations. I mean, the system is working. It's doing what it's supposed to do. Now, the problem is, the system is broken. So you've got this thing chugging along on one cylinder and the other 5 are just dysfunctional or broken or delayed or misfiring. And so it's working, but it's not running the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So we've got this solution. You want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah. So this immigration plan that the Senate is putting together, I've got a couple of bullet points here. So that's mandatory detention of all single adults.
Yeah, I don't know what I think about that. That's
I mean, what does that even mean?
Right. What does that even mean?
What does that? I mean, anyway.
Yeah.
Then there's the mandatory shutdown of the border once average daily migrant encounters hits 5,000. 5,000 a day. Okay.
5,000,
so they're saying
right.
Once it hits 5,000. Going to shut it all down. The Border Patrol will immediately remove illegal immigrants without processing them. There's no requesting asylum.
Nothing.
It's just shut down.
Yeah, like you hit a number and it's just kind of a random number at 5,000. I don't, it's not based on anything. It's just, hey, this is what we all agree is a reasonable number.
Well, I'm sure that they have, data to support that number, you would think, right? And then that shutdown would not lift until the daily encounters are reduced to under 75% of that 5,000 threshold for at least 2 weeks.
Right. So it would shut down for at least 2 weeks, basically, is what they're saying.
Yeah. And then they'll lift the shutdown once we get under 75% of that 5,000 threshold for 2 weeks. And then new removal authority to immediately remove all migrants who do not have valid asylum claims. I mean, which of them are not going to have a valid asylum claim? That's my question. I'm sure that they all do, or else they wouldn't be risking all that they're risking
you would think,
to
but
make
I don't
the
know.
trip. Yeah, but what are the criteria, right? I mean,
Right.
again,
Well,
it's
yeah.
arbitrary, and
Right.
who
Whatever.
decides? Who decides what a valid asylum claim looks
A
like?
judge. Yeah. I'm sure they've got a form that they,
Right?
anyway.
And then they would be determined within 6 months rather than years. This years long process that we have right now. So
Right.
they're saying that they're trying to reduce the time of processing to 6 months rather than years. But what are they supposed to do for 6 months? Like, what's the plan? What are they doing? Where are they staying? What are they eating?
And you're not supposed to be able to
do
work.
they have water?
So
Are they right? I mean, it's just I have just so many.
it's a mess.
Questions.
It's just a mess.
So many. Let's just put them all in cages. That'll be easier.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the problem New York and Denver are having. And now they're to the point where they're like, okay, you're kicked out. And I mean, in Denver, I mean, it's like 4 degrees and people are getting kicked out of their hotel rooms and stuff.
Yeah.
That's not the right answer.
No, I don't know what is, but I know that ain't it.
Right.
Oh, man. And then any migrant caught trying to cross the border twice during the shutdown phase would be banned from entering the U.S. for 1 year. Okay, like that's going to stop them, right?
Right.
And then, Biden has acknowledged the border problem. Of course, he wants to find a solution. He wants for Congress to pass a bill to help fix it.
Right.
I don't think that the problem is that they don't want to fix it. I think that they are not able to work together and see eye to eye on recognizing what a humane solution looks like.
Well, and a big piece, I mean, we've had opportunity after opportunity to fix this, and it just hasn't been fixed. And I think there's a big piece of this, especially on the GOP side. If it's broken right now, especially, they can blame Democrats.
Of course.
They can blame Biden.
Well, it's the only thing they can blame us for too, right?
This is a political hot potato game.
Yep.
And Democrats need to have very clear messaging on what is going on. And, I see it kind of being fumbled about, and they don't, it's just not real clear. So that's why it's like us at least sitting here trying to talk through this. I'm hoping it helps a few people understand this is what's been going on. This is where it is now. And this is what they're talking about doing.
Yeah.
But, if you know anything about government, Biden can't create laws. He can sign them into law. It's up to Congress, and that's the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. And the House is being run by a bunch of crazy MAGA folks.
I think an interesting point here is that Trump has demanded that Congress not pass any border legislation until he's in office. So far, it's working. They're not doing it. So,
right?
Why would he make that demand?
So he can run on it.
That's it. Hot potato.
And Mitch McConnell seems to be frustrated by that, but playing along. And of course, the Speaker of the House, I mean, he's a whack job. So what do you expect? He tries to act like he's normal, and he's not going to do anything. So, here we are. We're in a incredibly broken Congress who very likely will not pass any bipartisan border solution, even something that may be reasonable or whatever, because they specifically want to blame Biden for it.
Right. And they don't want any solutions to come because they want to take credit for the solutions that are to be had.
Right.
Jake,
right.
No. Get down.
Stop it. That's
the
our
crazy
dog.
Montfort household.
We got a dog on the countertop.
We've got counter surfing dogs, and we've got kids eating yogurt, and doors being slammed, and laundry being done.
Anyway,
football
everybody.
on the television.
Yeah. So I think we're out of time based on all that.
So that's it for today, folks.
Right. A reminder, allhat-nocattle's mission is to flip the Texas House. We only need 12, folks, 12 seats in the Texas House to take the majority away from the Texas GOP. We can't accomplish this without donations. So please consider giving us even a small amount. You can visit our website at allhat-nocattle.com to find out more and learn everything about us. Thank you all.
Thank you.